Well, I know I have some of your attention tonight because I saw several of you trying to get up here to see what this has to say. And over the next 9 weeks after tonight, we're going to become very familiar with this. We recently had our evangelism seminar, and that centered around 3 facts that you're going to hear us talking about for a long time. We're going to be talking about bringers, we're going to be talking about teachers, and we're going to be talking about keepers. Now, next week, we will define out more of what those things are going to be with teachers and with keepers. But tonight, for just a small moment during our lesson, we'll talk about the idea of bringers, because tonight is an overview of everything we're getting ready to do in regards to our evangelism ministry. And I want us to always remember the verse that was read for us in our scripture reading, Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. It will be the last verse we look at, and it will also be in the way we talk about some things, the very first verse, because here's what Isaiah said at the last part of verse 8. Here am I, send me. What I'm trying to get us to do tonight, and we're going to look at several biblical examples of this, is to see that we as God's people, we've got to be the people who say, I'll go. We've got to be the people who say, I'll take care of that. We've got to be able to be the people who say, I'll do it, instead of being the person who says, can't he do it? Why don't we send him? Oh, he'd be really good at that. So what I'm trying to get us to do is be involved. Somewhere in everything we're going to do in our evangelism ministry is going to be something for you. And we're going to go over a number of those things tonight. What we're trying to do is we're trying to see the start to something that's going to be really great as we study tonight together. Here's what we're going to do. It's going to be fourfold. Number one, let's look at the object. Why are we doing this? What can we learn from this? Well, we're going to see Jesus doing this in others and kind of get the idea, the object of what we're doing. Then we're going to look at what I've entitled the assistance. We've set something up here in the building, and it is all designed for you to have everything that you need. It's here to assist you. Now, we've got the table in the back. That will be a permanent fixture here in the auditorium. But we also have, in another location that I'll tell you in just a minute, all these other supplies that you're going to need to be a bringer, to be a teacher, to be a keeper in what we're trying to do together. So we'll see the assistance. Then we're going to see a point I've entitled the compassion. Jesus, while on this earth, had compassion. And every time we see Jesus having compassion, when it's mentioned in the text, great things happen. I was studying that word compassion, and I found something that I always knew was there, but I didn't really get why it was there. And tonight, we're going to look at why something's there that involves compassion. And hopefully, it'll change the way you think about something. And then we'll see a segment. It'll be the shortest segment of our night together, the reality, as we think about a lesson entitled, Here Am I, Send Me. Let's start off in our first point, the object. Well, what's the object of trying to start an evangelism ministry? We're going to talk about some things tonight. I've got all sorts of stuff tonight for us to talk about. And we'll get there in a minute. Don't be scared. That's not going to take us 2 years to do that. I promise it'll be real quick. But what's the point of all this? Why even have it? Why have an evangelism seminar? Why take a poster that got printed and have it framed that we're going to hang in the building somewhere? And I'll tell you about that in just a little bit. Why buy all these supplies? Because let me tell you, I don't know if you know this or not, but supplies aren't cheap. By the way, picture frames aren't cheap if you didn't know that. Why are we doing all this? Why are we talking about it all the time? Why are we trying to change the culture here at East Hill? Well, I think it's in 3 of these because we see the objects. We see Jesus who was willing to build relationships. That's the object that we're trying to go through. We see Jesus and we see ourselves as being someone who needs to teach the gospel, but we also see ourselves as someone who needs to shine the light. Go with me to Luke chapter 19. One of my favorite verses in the New Testament comes in Luke chapter 19. It's verse 10. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost. But all that hinges on what happens in verses 1 through 9. It was Jesus who comes into an area, and there just happens to be a man in Luke chapter 19. His name was Zacchaeus, and he and I get along real well because he wasn't very tall. And there were these multitudes of people, and he wanted to see Jesus. So what did he do as a short man? Well, he had to find a higher elevation so he could see what was going on with this one that's called Jesus. And read with me verse 5 in Luke chapter 19. It reads this way, and when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him. Well, where was he at? Well, he ran before, verse 4. He climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was to pass that way. And read verse 5. He saw him and came unto him. Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must abide at thy house. Jesus is the one that shows us one of the great objects of doing what we're getting ready to accomplish. I want us to change the way we talk about some things, okay? Let's not say that we're going to try to do it. What does try indicate? Failure. I want to do it. What does want indicate? I probably am not going to do it. I'd like to. What does that indicate? It's not really that important to me. But here's something you and I need to do. We need to train ourselves to do this. We're going to do it. He went to this house. He said, come on down, we're going to talk. And he built a relationship with this man of whom he never knew. What you and I get to do in all of this is we get to build relationships with new people. It's the object. We get to be people who teach the gospel. Matthew chapter 5, Jesus saw the multitudes in Matthew chapter 5, and look at what he did. And seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him, and he opened his mouth and taught them. Matthew chapter 5 is an important chapter because what happens in Matthew 5? The Beatitudes, these short statements that people need to hear. Blessed are, blessed are, blessed are. What was Jesus doing? By the way, search out Jesus' ministry. Jesus, yes, built relationships, but Jesus also was one who taught the gospel. It was the center of everything that he was doing. Yes, he was able to spend time with all sorts of different people, but there was a center, and that tells you and me something. Where is our center? Well, the object for us is to center ourselves inside of Scripture. Could you be like the one who taught the Ethiopian eunuch? Remember, he was reading the Scriptures, and he started there with the Scriptures. What you and I have got to do is we've got to prepare ourselves like Jesus did, like others did, like the apostles did, to sit down and with the Scriptures show someone what they must do to be saved. Now, I know that's scary. I know that's scary. Do you want me to tell you what one of my biggest fears is? Matter of fact, it's a weird dream that I've had before of waking up, not really waking up, but all of a sudden you're in the pulpit, you don't have a sermon ready, and everybody's looking at you. That's panic to me. Because I know what it's like, and you know what it's like to go to tell someone something and not know where in the world you're going to go. Well, that's why in just a minute we're going to talk about the things that will help us. And maybe you've got something that will help you. That's okay too. But what we're trying to do, the center object of everything is to build relationships, to teach the gospel, to shine the light. It goes on in Matthew chapter 5. And we find out in verse 16, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. What's the point of all of this? What's the object? What's the reason? It's to point to the Father. We build relationships to teach the gospel, to shine the light. Now, every person involved in this, whether you end up being someone who brings in contacts, we'll talk about that in a minute, someone who ends up teaching, that may not be for everybody, and that's okay. Maybe someone who helps people stay Christians, that may not be for everybody, and that's okay. But every one of us can shine the light, can't we? Every one of us can be a Christian influence in this world. So what's the object? Well, it's simple. It's hard, but it's simple. It's to build relationships. You know, I said this morning, but I really believe it. You're going to come into contact with people that nobody else will come into contact with. Just imagine how important your Christian life is. As you think about building relationships, as you think about teaching the gospel, as you think about as a Christian shining the light, it's something you do every day already, but now you're just putting it to work in a little bit of a different way. So as we think about Here Am I, Send Me, there's the object. Well, it's building relationships, it's teaching the gospel, it's shining the light, because isn't that who we're supposed to be? Now remember, in Matthew 5:16, what did it end with? That they may see your good works and... who gets the credit? Glorify your Father, which is in heaven. Don't forget, everything we're doing is to point people back to who? Back to God, not to us. So here am I, send me. The object is to be a person who follows the Scriptures. Now, let's talk about the assistants, because this is where we've got to talk about some stuff that will help us. And we're going to go through a number of things tonight, because what we're going to do is we're going to go over the room where all the supplies are, where you're going to have everything. This is a little early, I know, because what we're doing in all of this, listen to this, we're taking our time. We're taking our time. You may say it again, we're going to take our time. If you feel overwhelmed, that's okay. Let us know it's time to slow down. Because what we're trying to do in this, the elders, myself, Caleb, all of us, we're trying to do this so that all of us can do it together. And if you're overwhelmed, most likely, guess what? Somebody else is overwhelmed. And if we all start to get overwhelmed, what are we going to do? We're going to quit doing it. We're going to slow down. We're going to forget why we're doing it. And before we know it, we've bought all these supplies and we're never going to use them. Matter of fact, when we cleaned out the cabinet where all these supplies went, I found almost 100 volumes of a publication that was purchased that never got used. The program started, it got overwhelmed, and it was from 2011. A long time. I don't want this program to be one of those that somebody cleans out a cabinet years from now and says, wonder what all this was for. So if you're overwhelmed, let's slow down. We're going to take our time and do this together. So here's what you have as you think about all the things, and I'll go over them with you as we go. Here's the first thing. It's in the bottom little corner. You can see it. This one's neat. It's something that men, you're not going to be that impressed with, except you're going to say, hey, I'd like that, okay? This book is Recipes for Evangelism, and what it is little recipes. Oh, I opened it to a good one. Let's talk about this one. That's why, men, you're going to like it. It's little recipes, so you and your wife, when you build a relationship with someone, you and your family, you can invite someone over and you don't have to worry about a menu. I don't know if this happens in your house or not, but it happens in mine, and it usually happens on Sunday night or Monday nights. What do you want for dinner this week? You know what my standard answer is? I don't know. Because I don't know either. You know, sometimes we do things and we'll have these people over for a meal. Oh, what do we feed them? Well, men, have you ever wanted a recipe for Texas brisket? Boy, there's one in here. You keep on, and it can be simple things. Here is a recipe. Let's see if we can find something else. Let's see. Chicken and rice. Ooh, pizza with a crust. Simple little things to take a part of the planning out of it. So that's one of the resources that are here. And what I like about this book, ladies, you'll love this more than anything. Inside of this, and he talked about this at the evangelism seminar, is a picture of a person who sat down and had this meal and went through the back to the Bible study that we're going to talk about in just a minute, and they ended up becoming a Christian. And guess what? It had to do with a recipe, and this takes a lot of that hard work out. So there's one piece of assistance that you have. Maybe that's a hang-up for you. I don't know. Here's the second piece of assistance you have. Now, we don't have a lot of these, but if you take them all up, we'll order some more. This is a book. If you're going to be someone who wants to do Bible studies, now listen, that's not going to be for every person in this room. And let me say this loud and clearly. That's okay. It's okay. You don't have to be a person who sits down and guides someone through a study. That's okay. But if you are interested in it, this book's a good one. It was written by the man who wrote the materials that we're using in our program. So it helps you with some key words, some key phrases, and other things to go through a study as we are together. Now, we've got this book. It's sitting out there. I don't know how long it's going to last on the shelf, and here's why. This book is not necessarily for your reading. This is a book for Almost New Converts class. We went back and forth on whether we were going to put this one out. We didn't know how, but it's out there for now. Don't know how long it's going to be. I'm not going to say much about it because this is a book that will take you 16 weeks to go through if you get through every lesson in 1 week. But this is a book for later on, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go through. But it's something that we have, and it's something we need to talk about because it's there. Here's another material that you have. Maybe you want to study the Bible with somebody, but you're a little apprehensive of doing that. We have it on film form. I know film is a word we don't use much anymore. Here it is in a DVD. You can invite someone over. Maybe this is your method. Maybe this is for you. And you can say, hey, let's watch this together. It's only 64 minutes with everything packaged in there. That's really not that long, is it? So this is one of the things that we have for you. Not only that, we've got these books. Now, let me see which one we're on. I'm going to click the next two to get us ahead. These next three go together. Now, here's what we're doing on Sunday nights the next 9 weeks. We're going to take these books. Here's the first one, Lesson 1. Here's the second one, Lesson 2. Here's the third one, Lesson 3. And we're going to walk through these as if we were sitting down at the table having a Bible study with somebody, and we're going to go through these books so that every person knows how to do it. Now, you may be saying, well, I'm not going to study with somebody. That's okay. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to study it together, so we're going to get the study, the benefit from it, and then we'll see how we use it. And just maybe you'll be here and you'll say, hey, I think we could do this, and you'll have an idea that nobody else has thought of as we go through these. We're starting next Sunday night, and when you get here, at some point in time in the night, I haven't figured this out yet, you will get one of these. That way, as we go through it together on the screen, you'll have it with you. If you already have these books, bring it with you next Sunday night. That will just save us a little bit in these, but bring it with you, and we'll be going through the first third of this book on Sunday night. It's part of the things that we have here to help. These next two, actually the next three, I'm just going to put all those up together. These are ones you may not use as much, but they're good. I'm going to show you the last one. It's a little door hanger. If you go to visit someone and they're not there, take one of these with you and a pen so you can hang it on their door, write them a note, hey, just stop by to see you, and you can leave your information. It's just something you can use. And then these, we're not going to talk about these much because we're going to talk about these probably in about 3 or 4 months. This is a different version of these little booklets right here. They each have a different method. These little booklets are the main ones we're going to be talking about. This one, Does It Matter? Matter of fact, it is the counterpart to this. It's the same thing, and he just goes through and does it all for you. But this is something you'd use if you know somebody who's a member of the church and they've kind of fell away. Here's a great Bible study you can do with them. It's all right here. This is the beautiful thing about this. It's all right here. It's all done for us. All we've got to do, listen to this, all we've got to do is say, here am I, send me. It's all right here. It's literally that easy. And then this one, I'm going to spend less time on it. This is I don't know if I even believe in God series to help you get through that. That's more of an advanced thing. We will one day go through this, but it's not something we're focusing on the front. So what do you see? We've got all these supplies. Now, let me ask a question. This is yes, this is no. Is anyone overwhelmed yet? I normally don't ask questions, but is anyone overwhelmed yet? Hopefully it's all real simple. Now, I want to talk about this next segment that's on the screen, and I'll show you a little bit more about it. These top 2 shelves, and I've got some ladies who've already said they'd help us. They're going to take care of it. They're going to keep up with it. They're going to make sure it's always prepared and ready. These are the cards. Now, what we're starting, and it's going to be the main crux of what we're doing, it's going to be the bringer category. And every person in this room, every member of East Hill is a bringer. Because you know people. We're going to start a compassion card system. That's why we're going to study the word compassion in just a minute. And what that is somebody that you know that, well, maybe they'd like to become a member of the church. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to get us their name, their address, and their phone number. You're going to turn that in. And then we're going to send cards to these people. Then we're going to send things to these people. And then we're going to approach them together in a way to build a relationship. Now listen, here's what we're not doing, okay? This is what we learned in the evangelism seminar. We're not going to tell people how wrong they are. We're not going to tell people how sinful they are. We're not going to tell people how much we're right and how much they're wrong. You know what we're going to tell people? Love you to come to church with me. Love you to come to church with me. You want to come over and have dinner? That's what we're going to do. That's a different approach than really all of us have ever been accustomed to. But really, think about it. If someone wanted you to do something, would you want to be told how wrong you are? How do you react when someone tells you you're wrong? Well, there's stages of that. It's almost like the stages of grief, isn't it? You get mad at first. Then you either accept it or you deny it. Do we want to start by making people mad? I don't like that. I don't like to be mad. I think we can all do a lot, and we've learned a lot with this. So we're going to use these cards as ways to approach people to build relationships. Now, the compassion card system is not fully set up yet. And here's what I mean by that. Every member at East Hill is going to be on a card team. And when someone turns in a name for the Compassion card system, which will work with the Barnabas system, by the way, because we're only going to be sending cards to those that are in our local area. Sometimes on the Barnabas list, someone gets turned in a couple of counties over or maybe a few states over, and we need to send those folks cards. We do need to encourage them. But when we talk about this particular system, if they're local to us, that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for people that we can get to fill the pews. We're looking for people that we can get and reach and talk and build a relationship with. So every one of us is going to be on a group. There'll be 3 different groups. And one Sunday, whichever group you fall in, maybe it's group 1's turn to fill out a card. Whoever is there, everybody on the group goes to the room, fills out a card to send to that person, so that person gets a ton of cards from where? East Hill. Then the next week, group 2's turn. Guess what? That person gets more cards from East Hill. Then the third week, guess what? The next team goes and more cards go to that person. You'd be a lot more comfortable doing something that you've heard from before, huh? And that's the point of all of it. That's the design of all this. This is not our design, but it's something that we're going to do to build relationship. Everybody's a bringer in this system, and that's what we're looking at. So we have the object. This is why we're doing it. This is what we're going to do. We have the assistants. We have all these things, and I meant to mention this, but all these cards, the church is paying for them. You don't have to pay for them. You're just going to have to address it, and we'll put a stamp on it for you. You don't have to pay for the stamps. There'll be a place for you to lay those cards, and on Mondays and Thursdays, they'll get mailed out, and you won't even have to worry about a stamp. We're going to take care of all of that because we're looking at this as an investment in building relationships. We have so many, I think there's 1,000 cards in there already. They're all nice. Each of these are multiple packs. So if you have someone who maybe has lost a loved one, well, there's a ton of sympathy cards in there. Maybe you know someone who's sick, and that's who's on the Compassion card list of that week. Well, we've got a ton of Get Well Soon cards. Maybe you know someone who's been hurt in an accident or something. We've got these Speedy Recovery. We've got all sorts of cards that almost fit every category of someone who might be in our area, who might need a card, who we can start building a relationship. So all that, guess how much this is going to cost you? Nothing. Just a little handwriting, just a little work every now and then. Only every third Sunday it'll be up for you to sign cards. So that's a pretty good deal, isn't it? So hopefully we're not overwhelmed yet. So here's what we're going to do. Let's talk about compassion. I want you to notice the ministry of Christ with me, and that will help us see the word compassion, because we're going to see compassion, compassion, compassion. We're going to start in Matthew chapter 9, go to Matthew 14, then go to Matthew chapter 15. Then we're going to go back to Matthew chapter 9 to see something that Jesus said. Now, I want to give a disclaimer. In Matthew chapter 9, verse 36, don't read 37 and 38 yet. Just wait till we go back to Matthew chapter 9 to see that happen. Go with me, Matthew chapter 9, and read with me the words of Jesus. Matthew 9:36 reads this way about Jesus. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. It'll amaze you at the amount of times that the word compassion is connected to the ministry of Jesus. What did Jesus have? His heart bled for them. He had deepened sympathy. He understood the pains that they were going through. Listen to this. He wanted the best for them. What you and I have to do, and this is the hard part, is we've got to get out of the American mentality. What's the American mentality? Do what's best for you. What's the American mentality? Do what you want to do. What's the American mentality? Only worry about yourself. You know what we've got to do? We've got to realize that we're not the only people alive. We've got to realize we're not the only people that struggle. We've got to realize that we're not the only people who have problems. And when we do that, as Jesus was able to do, we'll be able to look on the multitudes. And let me tell you, I know we sometimes think we live in such a small town, but there are people out there that want to know more about the Lord. They want to know more about God. And guess what it takes? A little bit of compassion in this life. Go with me to Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14. We're going to come back to Matthew 9 in just a minute. Matthew chapter 14, Jesus goes forth. He sees a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. I want you to notice in Matthew chapter 9, he saw them because of their condition. Matthew chapter 14, he sees them and he is moved to action. Now, there's an action in Matthew chapter 9. We're going to see it in just a minute. But in Matthew chapter 14, he turns to their physical problems. You ever been sick? Well, the answer for all of us is yes, we've been sick. You ever got a get well card in the mail? Me too. When I had COVID, a number of you sent me get well cards. Now, for the first few days, I didn't go to the mailbox. But let me tell you, isn't that nice to go to your mailbox, get a card that's got your name on it, and get a handwritten message because somebody cared? That's compassion. Now listen, I'm never going to be able to go heal somebody who's sick. But I can have compassion on them. I can let them know that I care. And Jesus, and he was moved, he always took action. We're going to see his action in Matthew 9, but we see him here in Matthew 14. He takes action. Matthew chapter 15. Jesus has called his disciples. Go down to verse 32. He says, I have compassion on the multitude. You'll see what I'm trying to say in just a minute. Because they continued with me now 3 days and having nothing to eat, and I will not send them away fasting lest they faint in the way. Jesus fed them. Do you know what Jesus did? He looked after people's physical problems. Sometimes we're so focused on the spiritual problem that we miss the problem that will get us in the door. We miss the problem that will build the relationship. We miss the problem that will give the opportunity to help someone if we're willing to be people of compassion. Here's what I'm trying to point you to. When you go out these doors tonight, and you look left, you look right, you look across the street, you know what you're seeing? The multitudes. I know right now our world, our country is consumed with a night. It's tonight. If you don't know what it is, good for you. But the United States is consumed about tonight. Matter of fact, it's called soup or something. Just imagine if they knew we cared. Just imagine if we didn't tell them the first thing was, well, you should have went to church first. Because sometimes that's our first inclination. Compassion. Jesus moved to action no matter what they had done, no matter what they had been doing, he dealt with their problems at hand. So what problems do we deal with? We've got opportunities to help others and build those relationships no matter what it might be. You know somebody who's sick? Take them a bowl of soup. One of our... Well, I hope I'm not going to get in trouble for saying this. Elderly ladies, please don't be mad at me if this is you. I don't mean old, but seasoned. Had told me that she brought somebody a bowl of soup and it just made that person's day. And she said, that made me happy. Just a bowl of soup. Imagine what we could do. Can you believe that? Something so simple. It addressed a physical problem and it opened a door that maybe had never been there before. So compassion always has action. So go back with me to Matthew chapter 9. Matthew chapter 9. And I want you to see with me verses 37 and 38. So in Matthew 9, you see in verse 36, he had compassion. There's always action, but in this occasion, Jesus turns to his disciples. Verse 37. And Jesus, or then said he to his disciples, listen to this, the harvest is truly plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. Oh, do you see the connection now? Jesus had compassion on a people who had physical and spiritual problems. And then he tells his disciples that the harvest is truly plenteous, but the laborers are few. Many times when we go to Matthew chapter 9, verse 37, we're so concerned about the few that I think we miss the point of what Jesus was trying to promote in the action of His compassion. He was sending His disciples to deal with a lost and dying world, but He has been showing them over and over, and He keeps showing them through the book of Matthew how to deal with physical problems and reach spiritual problems. Maybe the reason the laborers are few is because there are few people who recognize that if I don't address the physical problems, I may never get to the spiritual problems. I'd never seen that before. Had you? Jesus is saying, go to the work, but the work is not just teaching the gospel, it's so much more. And this is what He says, verse 38, I love this. Pray ye therefore. Pray that we have the opportunity, and pray that the Lord of the harvest will send forth laborers into His harvest. But verse 39, if there was a verse 39, here's what I think it would say. And that you're the laborer in the harvest. I think that's the context of what He's telling us, to get to work in all these things. So when you look at the ministry of Christ, you see the compassion of Christ. So we have the object, we have the assistance, which is all this stuff. Don't get overwhelmed with it. It's not that much because it's very specific. It's detailed for what it's used for. Every tool has a purpose. All of this has a purpose. It's just a tool that we can use. Now let's see the reality. Now what I'm going to do is very simple. I want you to look at a verse. I'm going to put it on the screen. I'm not going to read it to you. I want you to sit there, and I want you to read it. I'll read it with you, but I'm going to do it in silence, just like you are, okay? And then I'm going to ask one question for the fastest point I've ever made in a sermon before. One question, okay? Read it with me. Here's the question. Will you answer the Lord's call? Will you answer the Lord's call? Remember what Isaiah said? Here am I. Not here is you. I know that's improper, but think about it. Here am I. Send who? Them. No, send me. You know what the reality is? Every one of us should be willing to go fill out a card. Every one of us should be willing to turn in a name. Every one of us should be willing to be a part. Whatever part that may be. You may not be a Bible study person, and that's okay. You may not be what's called a keeper, and we're going to talk about that long down the road. That's nothing we're talking about now. But you can be someone who's active in this, can't you? Isaiah had a hard task, and all I'm asking you to do tonight is to be active, because that's the reality. If we don't do it, it will never be accomplished. So here am I, send me, I hope is the start to something really great. Let me rephrase that. It is the start to something really great. Let's change the way we talk, even me, in what we're getting ready to do together. I hope that, correct that again. We're used to saying that, aren't we? I hope we will be successful, because if God is for us, who can be against us? The answer is nothing. If we're willing to be like Isaiah and stand up and say, I got it. I'll take care of it. This one's mine. You know what the good news about tonight is? God is still on His throne. Do you know what the good news about tonight is? He's not come back yet. Do you know what the good news about tonight is? We can still respond. Maybe you're here tonight and you need to become a Christian. Or maybe you're here tonight and you need to make your life right with the Lord. Maybe tonight is the restart you've been needing to get back to work, to get back going, and to get back started. The good news is the baptistry's ready. The good news is prayers are ready. If you need to come back to the Lord, you can. It's only if you're willing to stand up and say, listen, here am I. It's me. Not just send me, but this one's mine. I need to do this. All of us from time to time deal with that. So maybe it's you. Nathan has picked out a wonderful song for us to sing. Let's sing that song and let's determine if we need to become a Christian or if we need to make our life right with the Lord. Let's stand and sing and respond accordingly.
I bring my Since I cannot count that all